my name is Elian Granito, and I'm sitting here today with the award-winning creative team behind The Wrong Rock. I have the director here, Michael Cawood, the producer, Julie Pfeiffer, and the composer, Grant Kirkhope.
My role was probably a more logistical than creative, being a sounding board to Mike and offering suggestions on challenges. I did a lot more of the behind the scenes work in terms of keeping deadlines going, trying to get more financing. Now I'm doing a bunch of film festival stuff.
I was the director on The Wrong Rock, and essentially I had to fill in all the other gaps as well. So wherever we could find somebody to come on board to do something, it was able for me to parcel out that particular assignment, but whenever we couldn't, it was usually fell back to me to do it. I guess in a way I can list myself as the writer, director and partial producer of it. My priority was always trying to get the right people assigned to the right tasks. We worked with about 100 different people. At its peak, it probably had 24 people working on it.
He originally told me that this was going to be him doing it just by himself, and it would only take a few months.
Yeah, it was going to be like 3 months of me just tinkering on a computer. That was supposed
and
to be
it
the
turned
idea.
into this epic thing anyway.
Yeah.
So
People never understand what it takes to make something good. It takes a long time.
It definitely grew into a much bigger project than the original plan. But yeah, it was meant to be very simple, which is kind of why it's a story about toadstools.
I remember when he originally pitched the idea to me, what I liked about it is because it had a very clear beginning, middle, and end, with something that at the end made me go, aww.
One of the things I did was I actually sort of thought about what triggers me emotionally. And I find every time I'm watching a movie that touches on racism or sexism, I'm always rooting for the underdog, and those are the moments that really rile me up. At the end of the day, I may be an English-speaking white man in Hollywood, but I'm also an immigrant. I have had certain experiences in my journey to where I am now, where I've recognized certain elements of inequality. I have a deep connection to the material. Every time I see it in some other project where we're talking about racism or sexism or ageism or other issues, I call them isms, I do very much relate to those, and so I felt like that was something that I really wanted to connect to and make a story about. Here's the idea of how do I get a character on one rock to be jealous of some characters on another rock, and it was originally just pebbles, but I realized I couldn't make pebbles emote and have some form of character, and I didn't want to go as far as having full bipeds, faces and characters. I was really just trying to find the next level up I could get to. I could just give the characters some performance and use the filmmaking to drive the story. So we ended up with toadstools, which was like the most basic thing we could do that could plausibly move just enough to tell the story.
The story of The Wrong Rock. You have Martin, the mushroom. He goes to that island twice. Once he fails, and then he comes back. Why did you make that decision?
So, very typical film structure is that you have that hero try something, fail, try something different, fail, and then trying again and succeeding. Now in our case, we tried something a little bit more challenging in some ways, in that what we had was like, try and fail, try and succeed in getting your friends up there, helping his friends, but ultimately himself failing. And then the third attempt wasn't really an attempt so much as a quantum change in the way that the character thought of what was a success.
Which I think, that first failure is really key in, like he said, setting up that opposition and that other point of view where, like, you're different than me, you don't belong. But that also gives that person a room for change.
We came to the conclusion we really had to do that evil deed on screen in order to have the audience connect to the hero character that much stronger. You know that from that moment forward that they've bought into that character and that they're going to root for him that much more strongly because they know what's happened to him before.
With the ending, we pull out and we see it's all, we're all on the same rock. But one of my favorite parts is how we pull even farther back at the end, and we can see how even it felt like such a big drama, but it's really just this tiny part of something that's even larger. It's such a small cosmos of this huger thing that's going on.
And we considered a few different ways of ending it.
Yeah.
We were looking at things that would put the whole story in context and make you realize that We are all on the same rock together with the same problems. So why be worrying about this stupid little difference here
Right.
when you've got much bigger issues
Yeah.
over here?
Yeah, we at one point discussed having a bulldozer
Okay.
coming
Or an
towards
asteroid,
Okay.
or
A pig.
a warthog
Oh,
that would come
fine.
along to eat
okay.
the
And they're like,
mushrooms.
wait, no.
because
A truffle pig. You should have made them truffle.
That's right. Because we wondered if that wouldn't hit the nail on the head even more. That it's like,
Right.
you know, we're squabbling.
Yeah, we're
amongst
squabbling, but
ourselves.
really it's like
That's a
the
bigger
world's
issue.
problems are so much bigger, guys.
Right.
Yeah. You made the wrong rock with an online collaboration. How do you manage so many people, especially if they're all over the world?
Well, it's tricky. It's definitely tricky. We were lucky because at least we were in the same
It's a town,
town.
right.
We actually had a session here where we had him up on video chat
yeah.
and the film up on the screen and try and hone in on very subtle nuanced
Yeah,
things.
definitely, yeah.
It's better for me to just tell you like what are the emotions that we're trying to aim for than for me to say, can you change the instrument here? Can we go up here? Can we go down there?
Right. Mike's great at giving that direction, say it's on the right track. That's the way I like to work best of all, so it suits me to the ground like that.
The team consisted of people from literally all over the world. What was cool about that is it speaks to the theme of the film.
Yeah.
And I think that everybody who really came on board like would say to us, this theme resonates with me. I want to make this project. And so that
Yeah.
I think helped motivate people, because even though it is a volunteer project, you know, you have to stick to deadlines. And so that was one of the big challenges throughout the process. But I think we found ways to engage people. We would have a team meeting every week.
There was a time when we had it every week. Of course, you have the challenge of trying to figure out what time of the day in the week the most people.
Everybody.
Yeah,
And it was-
at different
With
time
time zones
zones.
across the world.
The right
Exactly.
time of day as well. Like,
Sleeping
yeah, the
or-
right time of
yeah.
day, like
Yeah.
early in LA, so late for everybody
The
else.
worst was when we had a storyboard artist working in New Zealand, and it's like trying to get her on the same schedule as everybody else was really impossible.
That's not doable, is it? I don't think.
It's not.
No,
I mean,
I mean, in a
basically-
meeting, you couldn't talk, could you?
Yeah.
No.
So occasionally, some of them would be very generous, and they would show up at 4:00 in the morning, their time. The best thing we did was we had the weekly meeting. We just alternated between Saturday morning and Sunday morning, and that helped different people in different time zones.
Mike was also really available, like kind of 24/7. We utilize his Slack. So he made himself very available.
Right.
Because he didn't want people on the other side of the world waiting on him to answer something.
And the truth of the matter is, I kind of know that any creatives, like sometimes you actually want that time. You want to just sort of go, okay, I've done all my creative stuff, I'm going to put it out there, and now I'm going to step away, and they actually don't mind the fact that it's going to take 12 hours to get their response, because
They
12
want a
hours,
break.
12 hours later, they'll be more objective about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it can be hard sometimes
Yeah.
taking that critical beating
Yeah.
after you've just done it.
Yeah.
If you
Yeah.
give just one shot to an animator, they spend so much time on that one shot. Instead, what we did was give blocks of shots. So an animator could have anything from about 4 to 20 shots. The benefit of it was that the longer we could keep those blocks of shots moving through the pipeline, faster we went through the total footage. We would get huge chunks of the film delivered all at once. And so we went through 5 times as much footage in a lot less time.
It's incredibly complex. It's incredibly time consuming. We want them to volunteer and get something out of it as well.
Right.
It shouldn't be one-sided. You know, whether it's that they want something different in their portfolio or that they want, to get to know Mike who works in Hollywood, or they want to know, how to use a new software. Like whatever it is, we want them to get something from it as well.
And also having devil's edge in the data, because that was also high quality, so you could say, look at that, we made that before. That was like 5 years ago, and it still looks great.
Yeah, and it
It's-
has
yeah.
like 15 million views online.
Yeah,
Right,
Which
and
is
that
amazing.
helped to bring a lot of
Yeah.
people on because they saw the quality of
Yeah.
that, and they knew that working on your film, they would end
It's
up
gonna be
most
better than
likely
that.
with something. Yeah.
How
yeah,
long
films.
did Devils, Angels, and Dating take you?
That took a lot longer because there were certain things that were so much harder to get made when you were spending nothing on it.
And had more assets.
There was more complexity to the assets. One of the things that we did in this that cut corners was just the fact that it was predominantly a cast of one type of character, the Toadstool. So it was the same character rig all the way through. And we made variations to make each one look a little different.
By choosing to be kind of pared down in our approach of the characters, was kind of funding in itself.
And actually the only other character that we added was the Ladybird. And that came from a screening of something. I watched, there was a film I saw where they did some fantastic work with these secondary characters that were not part of the main story, but they just brought a little bit of humor. And it helped you understand what the hero character was going through, because you suddenly saw it through the eyes of the secondary character. I ended up settling on the idea of this Ladybird character who was sort of an outsider but with similar problems. And the Ladybird herself has her own little mini story. It's something I think a lot of people only pick up on on their second viewing or something.
Right,
but the idea of the Ladybird was that she can't fly as easily as all of her family could. She felt like an outsider. And we did other things to sort of make things more efficient too, like we made a library of animations as well. So we had walks and jumps and turns, all kinds of little things that we could just hand off to the animators and say, hey, construct your shot with these basic pieces. In order to get through most of the blocking, and then they could refine it after that. So you could make a character walk through a shot, turn, and hit all its major marks, and then you could go back over it afterwards and refine things. That would save time over trying to animate the whole thing. We would put a lot of effort into making sure that we had production stills and concept art that looked up to a certain standard, so that they thought, oh, if I put my effort into this, then they're going to make me look good. And everybody does the same thing, and when you all come together and the whole thing looks fantastic. One of the biggest challenges we just had was that because there was going to be water in almost all the shots, and that is notoriously known to be a very hard thing to do in CG animation. Like, we had to figure out what is the line where it tells the story and it's giving the right emotional beats. So we actually had to sort of work backwards. Like, this shot here has a high impact and we want it to really sell the idea, so we'll spend a lot of time on that. And then we work down a list until we get to the point where we're just saying, I don't mind emotionally that there's no foam against the rock over here, so we're not going to do that.
Priorities.
There was a point at which we could tell we're honing in on the end of the film here. There are certain events that we'd love to get the film into in time for, and we're running out of money, and I have to get a job. So
Back to work.
That's where all the deadline comes into ultimately, and that sort of helps focus you and helps focus which team members should spend what time on what things. They would say, should I do this thing? And it would be up to me to say yes or no. If you think you can get the look that we're going for, but only in this many hours, then go for it. But if you start it and it looks like it's going to take you 10 times longer, then let's cut it off and not do it, because it's not worth it.
So with characters that don't necessarily emote facially or have dialogue to fall back on, obviously the score is going to be very important. So can you talk to us about that?
Mike was great at being able to always convey to me what he wanted emotionally, which is super important for a composer. It's important for me to kind of always establish what Mike had in his mind for what Martin was feeling at the time. And like, you know, you can easily write a piece of music and miss all of that. There's a very strong thing that goes through the whole movie about, I guess it's generally Martin's theme, but I switched it to a sadder version and a happier version and different arrangements of it. So you kind of, and even when the theme isn't completely quoted correctly, it's rhythmically correct. So even though it wouldn't be the actual notes that are in the recognisable theme, it's the same rhythmic pattern, so it implies that theme. Some instruments just give character to the right thing. When we first hear Martin's theme, it's a clarinet, it just suits him. It comes out of the ground and kind of grows, like, you know, it gave it a playful nature. I'm more of a traditional composer. I like that kind of Star Warsy thing when you hear Luke, you know, it's Luke's theme, you use Darth Vader, it's Darth Vader's theme. You miss that in movies these days. The subject matter is really meaningful. And it's nice to write something where you can get your teeth into it. Like, you know, as a composer, you always want to make sure you hit the kind of big emotional moments.
I definitely challenged him with some things. Like, I was telling him at moments like, I kind of want this to be a little bit like The Matrix here. We want to change the pattern here so that the audience can actually laugh at how preposterous it is that there are these toadstools trying to go out on this epic adventure.
There were other ways that we could pinpoint that theme with, for instance, the song that we created for the end.
Put on your sunglasses, go and step outside all the time.
When we were looking for a song, I really wanted to work a group called The Misses, and just thought it was going to be a song that would start when the credits roll. The way that they started ramping up the song at the beginning, it sounded so good to just slip it over the end of the movie.
Under the rays of the sun. We're spinning round and round.
Hi, I'm Andrew with the Mrs. Band, and this is Behind the Music with the Same Rock. So how we got involved with the project, we had a phone call with Julie and with Michael. They sent over a clip and we instantly fell in love with it. First of all, we fell in love with their message and really what the whole entire movie is about. So when we got in the studio as a band, we knew that we could really write something that would resonate to all audiences, to let them know that we're not alone, that we're all walking this earth as one, and really we're all on the same rock.
We all live on the same rock and we all live on the same rock and we can walk on.
We've actually thrown in some unique twists and things to it. Larissa plays the flute. We get to have a lot of fun with it. One of my favorite things, I went to LA to see one of the official releases of the film, and seeing our song live on the big screen and watching right when it comes in, right when the mushrooms start popping and it's boop, boop. It was so exciting to see all of the work of all of us come together and to really feel the power in that room. So very rewarding, very exciting to be on this project with so many talented individuals. This is one of our favorite songs in our set list when we perform live, and so we hope you love it too. Hey, this is Andrew from the Misses, and that was Behind the Music with Same Rock.
I had been pitching the film. My verbal pitch always ended with, in the end, we're all on the same rock. And everybody would always go, oh my God, and that's how we came to say, let's do a lyrical song that literally says we're on the same
Yeah,
rock.
it's fantastic that they were able to come up with that for you, and it's so
Yeah.
perfect.
When we first got the song, Mike was like, okay, I'm going to put it in the movie. Before I even listened to it, I watched it in the movie, and I cried.
Yeah.
I
very
literally
powerful at the
cried,
end.
and I was just like, oh
Yeah.
my God. So that spoke to, nailed it, done.
Yeah.
And
then
like-
we're partying in the aisles. Is really,
yeah, exactly.
So you've already covered a lot about working collaboratively with a virtual studio. But do you have any other tips you might want to give for future filmmakers?
One of the things is that you have to keep people motivated. The only way I've ever found to do that is to create a sort of it's like a Facebook-like feed of activity, and you continuously encouraging everybody on the team to be posting updates to that feed.
Yeah, I think that creates a community a little bit, and then it also, again, that momentum of like he said, oh, other people are working on this. Oh, okay, cool. This is gonna get done.
One of the things we would do as well is I would try to give the team members a bit of a choice of what it was that they wanted to work on, and it gives them that sense of I got to choose what it was I worked on, and so that they're that much more invested. Another thing that I still don't think that any of the platforms have really solved this yet is trying to get people to upload their work as they're going along, the actual working files. As long as I have a file that was dated to within a day or two of having seen their work, I would feel, okay, we have a copy. So if that person is never available again, we can follow through and carry on with that task.
Without losing the work that
Right,
they've already done.
Oh, absolutely. Where along the process did it start to snowball into this thing that turned into the quality that it is now, and the people that where did you decide it needed to be bigger?
I mean, there's a lot of factors to it, and it's when you watch it, you're trying to make decisions about what is emotionally working. So for starters, you're adding things, little details as you go along, so it just sort of creeps out a little bit anyway.
We storyboarded the entire thing first, and that's probably where the story beats started expanding.
Did you write a script for it at all?
There was originally an outline written down, because it's not dialogue though, it's not really
No.
a script.
I think another way that it gently and subtly got bigger. So as soon as he went from not doing it himself to having team members, where all of a sudden it got bigger.
When I originally started it, I thought to myself, well, I could do the whole thing in what they would call it in the software just a play blast form. And I could make a play blast look pretty good, but as soon as you introduce somebody whose level of production value you expect to see from the major studios,
How can you say no to that?
you have to sort of
Yeah.
live up to
Yeah.
that. We got to that point where we sort of had this very subtle, light, child-friendly intro to the film, and I kind of realized that so many audiences are going to click away. If they click on it, they watch the first 30 seconds and they think, oh, this is a kid's thing. and they don't necessarily realize where the trajectory of where the story's going to take them. So I felt like we needed a more epic intro. So we added on an extension of the opening shot that gave us a bit more of a dynamic camera maneuver, and then gave Grant an opportunity to do a bit of a swell of something epic, just to sort of say, hey, this is going somewhere. We're going to bring you back down, but you know it's going somewhere.
That intro bit definitely has like big crescendo up to the island. That was a good idea. And I think it really did. You didn't know what was going to happen next. It was like, what? It's getting very big. What, what's going to happen? You didn't quite know where it's going to go. So.
And then it goes small.
Yeah.
But it's like, okay, so we've already laid the groundwork for the two extremes, so you can expect more of those extremes.
Yeah. No, I think you get those moments where it just all worked. I just think it just all worked. I think we worked. We had a good rapport. We could have a good laugh. I don't get offended when he says it's awful.
I don't think I ever said it was
No,
awful.
no. I mean, I'm not. I just don't get offended. I'm just happy to change it till it's right. So, I think that's the way the best collaborations happen. If you two stick in the mud, it's never going to work. You have to bend to get it right.
The passion just really has to be there,
Yeah.
because there is just so much sacrifice involved.
That's true.
But it's worth it when you see it at the end and you're able to share this story and this message. I think, it ends up being worth it.
How did you get funding for this project?
The funding was the biggest challenge, and funded it personally. We tried a couple of different techniques like crowdfunding. We applied for some grants, and we also actually tried sponsorship. What was interesting about that is our story and characters aren't brand integrated content. We couldn't put, Martin, instead of floating on a log, he's floating on a Coke bottle or something. So I don't think we were quite the right fit.
Some good things came out of it, like we ended up making the book.
We had all of this really great concept art. Making a children's book just felt very organic.
Are there any deleted moments?
We did have some material that we actually had to cut. There was some scenes about a third of the way through the movie that were heavily based on some concept art created by Solomon Gamino. And he did these fantastic wide shots that just kind of sold the concept of the film. And they felt like something that had to be in the story. But as we went along, we realized that we were spending more time than we really needed to on the first attempt to get to the island because of these extra scenes. And ironically, the few scenes that we felt we could cut out to reduce the workload and shorten the film were those very same scenes. With a little bit of rethinking, I managed to get one of them back into the film. So it was a wide shot of Martin the Mushroom on the log, looking up at this vast rock in between a pause of like two giant waves. And what we did was we just added the other mushrooms onto the log and put a strike of lightning and turned the whole thing from day to night, and reused that scene later on.
A big shout out to everybody who worked on the project, because there is just so much sacrifice involved.
That's true.
If there's any budget for this thing, it comes from people's free time. They did such amazing work at the end of the day. And we can't thank them enough for what they brought to the project.
I want to thank Grant, Michael, and Julie. So if you want to have more information about this fantastic film, please follow us at wrongrock.com, find us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter. Please download the song The Same Rock from iTunes. And the Wrong Rock book is available at amazon.com.
No need to worry, we'll be alright. One life to live, so let's take that jump. I know we're different, but we're all one.